The problem is you don't have too many publicly traded PGM specific stocks. So I look at like, when um, it's 16 or 20 times more rare than gold in the Earth's crust and it's trading at a third of what gold is, I just buy the metal.
And Donald wants to know, he says, what is your opinion on Melbana Energy?
So I had no idea what Melbana Energy was, but to, be of service to people, I took a look at it. This is exactly the company that people should not buy. This is pure speculation. The way I read it was this company has some assets in Australia, but I think their main thing is drilling for oil in Cuba. Well, how much? I just told you where the opportunity is. Why do I want brain damage screwing around in Cuba? Well, people say, well, John, there's an opportunity. Yes, I understand. I used to own Sherritt back in the day when they had the nickel mine there. Plus, they ran power plants there. They got slow paid by the government. It was always a problem. Blah, blah. Why do I need that brain damage? I don't need that. There's plenty of other easy. That's a pure speculation. Maybe it works out. Does this person have any particular insight that the government might become a free market economy there? Well, then that might be interesting then. I mean, there is some oil there, without a doubt. Why do I want to deal with the Cuban government? And then you're dealing with, the United States and sanctioning it. I mean, there's no other easy oil companies to buy in the world. That's, I'm not telling you not to buy it. I say I would really watch my position sizing and, I would have to say I'll bet $10,000. We could put it in escrow that you're probably going to lose money on that position. It's just these things don't, it's not going to work more than likely. Stay away from things like that. My advice. There's easier ways to make money.
Okay, sound advice. How about coal? Gabriel wants to know, what are you thinking about coal at the moment, both metallurgical and thermal?
I just added a thermal coal producer to the portfolio last month. It looks like thermal coal prices have bottomed. They're moving up to around $107 a ton. Met coal's kind of down, around 248. I think coal is an excellent opportunity. We've had record amount. I think the energy survey, I don't think BP does anymore. The IEA does it, I think. But coal use was at a record last year. It'll be at a record this year. It's not going anywhere. So same thing, undersupplied. Who is going out and building new coal mines? Um, no one. Uh, we're past peak ESG, but still, I think people aren't ready to start loaning money to build greenfield coal uh, mines. And so the people with the existing assets are kind of sitting in the cuckoo bird seat. So I think there's nobody. Everybody hates it. Everybody's misinformed on it. I think people are surprised when you say that there's a record amount of coal used last year. There'll be more coal used. Coal will be, if you look at the history of energy use, people say, well, it's going to get displaced by renewables. People don't understand how energy transitions work. People still build the previous energy source that supposedly got replaced still is in the mix. Okay. And because there's an unlimited amount of human wants and needs and comfort desired and products and services. And so this all requires energy inputs. So the numbers are so huge, people can't really understand. There's a shortage of molecules, actually, not in the earth, but extracted. And so, what's a name I'll throw at you? Here's a name I like, Glencore. Okay. Um, Probably if you're going to be in a commodity bull market, and what did these guys do? They came to the shareholders like a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago and said, hey, everybody else is divesting their coal assets because ESG and want to look good. Well, Glencore, I think, was started by a guy named Mark Rich. People should understand who that guy was. These guys are like a pirate ship crew. I mean, they might mouth the words. I didn't really hear them talking about ESG, but company in Canada called Teck Mining, which is a big company, they went full ESG, and they had a huge Elk River coal mining complex. I believe it's met coal, and they wanted to focus on new energy metals like copper and stuff. And so Glencore bought their Elk River coal operation from them. And then we said to the shareholders, no, we don't want you to get out of coal. We want you to buy more coal because, it's not, we want to have all these assets that are almost irreplaceable. So, um, yeah, that's a company I like, and I like coal and and thermal, and I think they kind of bottomed, and people hate it, and people are misinformed on their views on it, I think, which gives you an opportunity.
Yeah, I like Glencore a lot. I liked it a lot on Liberation Day. That was a gift. That was a gift. Okay, moving on to uranium. Rusty wants to know what companies should we look at to profit from the processing of uranium?
Well, I mean, there's what's it, Centrus is Francis is uranium, but kind of overvalued. It's kind of had a huge move. I mean, Cameco does, they have the complete fuel cycle. It's interesting if you look at the Westinghouse acquisition they did with Black, who was it? BlackRock? No, somebody. Brookfield up in Canada. I think that thing's already paying off because they got the big check um, contract. Look, nuclear power is the future of the world's energy. I don't think anybody that actually knows what's going on doesn't understand we're in a nuclear renaissance, bull market. There's just not a lot of publicly traded vehicles, unfortunately, on some of these things, and the ones that are kind of. I love Cameco. It's a well-run company. A lot of people like to crap on it and the management and criticize them, but they navigated all of this downturn and kind of played the recovery fairly well, in my view. And but it's expensive. But it's kind of like, okay, so I think a lot of times maybe it's the best thing to do is just like buy URNM and call it a day. Um, I see a lot of speculation going on in these new nuclear companies. Some of them have been up like, I don't even follow them. There's kind of like internet companies. They don't have any sales or earnings. It's all speculation. You know, God bless you if you were able to get in early and make money on it. That's great for you. That's not a game that I play. That's speculating. Which one's going to be the reactor that gets approved and they actually ramp it up? It's like people don't think this stuff through. Okay, it's worth following and you should follow it. But okay, you get your reactor approved. Then you actually have to go from concept or model or demonstration project to grunt. I mean, it's just fraught with all kinds of risks. By Cameco, by uranium, but you don't have to screw around and speculate and wonder who's running the company or what their real motivations are and whether they know what they're doing. Unless you're really going to dive down and make this almost like a part-time job, I wouldn't try to get too cute. Just buy URNM, you'll probably do well. Just buy Cameco, something like that on dips. You were given a tremendous opportunity over the last year because we had a cyclical downturn. Um, all the all the speculation and all the shoe clerks got rinsed out last year. And so look where we're at now. I mean, we can get into that. I mean, every day that goes by, more and more positive news, more reactors approved. Sprott upsized the recent offering from 100 million to 200 million. I mean, it's you know, like I said, why am I trying to figure out which modular reactor design is going to get approved by the NRC? I mean, and when are they going to build the? I mean, a company I do like that's guys in my Discord. I give them credit. If somebody wants to take a look at it, I think it's interesting. Um, I'm not sure about the technology 100%. I own a few shares. Is that ASP Isotopes?
Oh
They're
yeah,
actually
yeah.
going cash flow. They're going to start having cash flow from a lot of the medical isotopes that are in short supply. And then they have this view. Now, there's people on both sides of the thing. Some people think they're charlatans. They don't really have the technology. But if they're delivering like selenium, whatever, 139 to Pfizer, that's going to be used in prostate cancer patients, I think that that's legitimate. The real payoff is the HELU fuel, their process to do that, whether they can ramp that up. But I think that's worth looking at, something like that. But that thing's run a lot. The guys in my Discord were talking about it. It was like a buck and a half or $2. I think it ran to like 8 or 9. It's back down into the sevens. Something to take a look at. I think that's interesting. But yeah, that's kind of how I would look at it. I mean, I would just, you could have bought the Sprott Trust, Sput at times over the last year at close to 20% discount to net asset value. So you were getting physical uranium for 80 cents on the dollar. I think that's a good, that was a good because I think the uranium price is going to make all-time highs. You inflation adjust from the previous, talking about 250, $300 a pound. I think we're going to get there eventually.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So for most people, URNM, the ETF, the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, and Cameco is fine. They can do that and then just go fishing. Unless you're really, really going to dive into these things, then probably wasting your time.
I don't want to say waste your time, but you're going to have a hard road to hoe. Because what happens is you get people get wedded to one name and they go all in, and then it doesn't go. And then you've missed. People wrote me and said, "Well, I've made no money in uranium. How is that possible? That chart you showed. How is it possible you didn't make any money? Well, you bought at the top, so then you got rinsed out. And it didn't do what you wanted it to do anyway."
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I get some of the same letters, and I'm floored too. That's got to be it. They got to be buying at the top and then selling at the bottom. It just doesn't make
Exactly.
sense because this whole sector has been free money for the last 3 years.
It's
Okay.
made. Yeah.
Yeah. Contra wants to know: do you follow Mega Uranium? He's saying it seems to be trading at a large discount to net asset value.
Yeah, I agree. That's trading. So what I would do is get on the phone with the management and ask them what their plan is to close that gap. I mean, I think they own 20 million shares of Next Gen. They own positions like an ISO, Energy, Toro. What are you guys doing to close the gap? I'm a shareholder. I want you to close the gap. They have some uranium properties. I don't know if they're drilling them. I haven't followed it in a long time. It did really, really well during the last bull market. I think it was up like 5,000%. It's been around forever. That's what I would do. I would say, okay, yeah, I understand. It's interesting that you say that it's trading less than net asset value. What is the management's plan to close that gap? If they can't answer it, then that's a reason why it's priced the way it is, because people realize that, I don't know the management, I don't know these people, but that's what I get on the phone and say, not the IR guy, get the CFO or CEO on the phone and say, hey, look, man, you got this valuation gap. I mean, what are you going to do to close the gap? What's the purpose of this company? Instead of maybe it's a lifestyle company. I don't know, but that's what I would be. I agree it's undervalued relative to the assets it holds, but not worth. There's no catalyst to close the gap, then it's not worth messing with, in my view. Why not just buy next gen if you like next gen? Why do I got to buy Mega if they're not gonna? And then people like that, I want to know what they're gonna do, because then they start doing stupid stuff. You know what I mean? Like next gen management didn't impress me when they did the Formula One advert. I mean, come on,
Oh, that
guys,
was
get this
so
thing
dumb.
permitted and built.
Yeah.
This is nonsense. Okay, you guys sitting on one of the best assets in the world. What are you doing? What are you doing? So you got to look at the management. You're in business with these people when you own the company. Are these people legit? Are they flakes? I mean, I've had offline conversations. I don't know if it was with you or other guys that go to these conferences, and some of these guys are been to these conferences too. I don't go to them anymore. I mean, some of these people are just nitwits, man, and they're just drunk, some of them, and there's really good managements, but there's dipshits out there too. And I was like, I'm going to be in business with this dipshit? I don't think so. Can't answer a question. You know, the idea is just keep the game going. There was a guy, people should tell the story. There was this company, I think the guy finally died. I knew about this back in the 80s. He was doing this. It was called Silverado Mining. It was a gold and silver mining company in Alaska. And the guy that ran his name was Gary Anselmo. Nothing personal against him. I never met him. But what he would do is he was always hyping something. Okay. First, he was doing some process when silver halide photography was going to recapture the silver out of that. Then, that went away when the digital camera. Then he used gold nuggets. It was not an actual mine, but they had the nuggets and we're going to make jewelry out of it. And he would just issue shares to schlubs. They would run up. He's getting paid a salary, obviously, and getting shares also, and then selling them into the market. And then when he got, a couple 100 million shares, he'd do a 1-for-10 reverse split, and then repeat it with the next generation of morons and do. He did this for 40 years. So you got to be careful in this industry. People don't necessarily mean what they say or are going to do what they say. That's why you want to be in business with people. That's why what people want to shit all over Cameco's management, some people. Hey, some guys have been there for 20, 30, 40 years. Hey, something to be said about that through the various cycles. That company survived and it's thriving now. And it's set up for the big time. So that's, you know, there are people are very important. Have they done this before? Do they have a plan? Do they know what they're doing? Do they understand that it's beyond my scope? So we're gonna be a project developer, and then we're gonna sell out to a company that specializes in actually building mines. Just because you can drill out a resource and get a 43-101 doesn't mean you can actually build a mine and run it then. Those are different skill sets. Not everybody has all the skill sets. Very few people have all three. And so you can call the managements, go to these conferences and talk to the people. Walk up to them and talk to them. And if they blow you off, then that tells you right there, this guy doesn't want to be in business with me. But be careful because there'll be 200 exhibitors in a hall and all of them got a story and they all sound good. Believe me. So anyway, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but that's how I would look at that stuff. You got to be careful out there. This is shark infested waters with chum and blood floating around, and you're jumping in the middle of this. Uh, what do they say in poker, Steve? After you sit down within 10 minutes at a table, what do they say? If you don't know who the sucker is, then you're the
It's
sucker.
you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway,
That is so true. Well, I want to emphasize what you just said about calling management. I kind of have a little unwritten rule that if I can't talk to management or if they don't call me back, then I don't buy the stock. If you have a company that has a market cap that's less than 300 million and you can't talk to the CEO, you should not buy it. These guys should be chomping at the bit to talk to you, and that is their cheapest way to get people interested in their company is to return an email, a text message, or a phone call. And if you can't get them on the phone, then don't waste your time. That is one of the quickest ways to eliminate a company.
one
Uh,
other thing I would add, if you're a real player and and you're like a, what do they call it? Uh, what do they call those investors? I'm a accredited investor. If you're an accredited investor and you got a real bankroll, then you need to go to these conferences. You need to introduce yourself to Rick Rule and these other people, and you tell them you're a player, and that's another way to do this. I'm not saying it's inside, but they when they go to a private placement and you're a player and you can inculcate yourself with these people, then you're going to be turned on to deals. But that's an area that most people can't play in. That's retail. I've had some of the best success I've had in some accredited investing deals, not necessarily in mining, but other things, because I'm in there with people that are the principals or the players and real money, and they let me tag along, and I've done very well. So if you're an accredited investor and you want to do it, that's the way to do it. You got to go to these things, start meeting people, start letting people know that you're going to you can write checks and hitch your wagon of serial successful people. And I think that that's another way to do this.
yes, very good point. Okay, and Tony wants to know your thoughts on Denison Mining.
Good company. When are they going to build Phoenix? I mean, again, I think we've learned now, even from some of our friends that are bringing brownfield projects, mining's hard. So you start going from present. I looked at the presentation last night. It's like, okay, well, are their all-in sustaining costs legit? What's the PEA say? Are they going to be able to build this? When's it going to? I think it's 2028 now. Okay, well, I mean, I think they got some good management and good properties, but that doesn't guarantee anything. Talked about John Borshoff early in this. He caught the cycle wrong, and he's no longer at Paladin. He built the company from the ground up. So, um, you know, mining's very hard. Mining actually sucks as a business. It's a net destroyer of capital, except for these periods of time when they can over achieve and their returns. And so that's what you're trying to catch. These are not buy and hold investments. Mining's horrible. It's very fraught with a lot of risk. Everybody's trying to ruin the project, the province, the government, the bankers, the people working at the mine. I mean, I say that not literally, but a lot of if you don't really know what you're doing, I've built a lot of big projects, power plants and stuff like this, and that's exactly right. You got to know more than everybody else out there because everybody isn't paying attention. And one decision that a subcontractor makes, I don't know, they do something wrong and they cave in the open pit. Well, you're out of business, for example. And ISR, well, you saw what happened down here in Encore. They had to bring all the old hats. One guy who who's like the master of ISR. He's 80 years old. They had him out here, in the Texas heat, giving the young guys direction. They finally got it back on, Bill Sheriff and those guys. They had to get out there into the field, and these guys are in their 60s and 70s. They're not turning wrenches, but you know what I mean. You got to know what you're doing. It's still not guaranteed. So yeah, I think it's a good company. But going from visions, see, people will look at it and say, well, yeah, Phoenix is going to do, or their things are going to do this. The visions of sugar plums, but getting from that to, when Paladin turned Langer Heinrich back on, they struggled. They had water issues, then they couldn't produce, they couldn't meet guidance. Share price is going to it got nuked. And then they had the big flood earlier this year and that knocked them out of the box for a while. And so it's never ending problems. That's what I mean when everybody's trying to wreck the project. So you better be in business with people that actually have done this before and actually know what they're doing, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's tremendously risky, but it can be very lucrative. But, I'm not trying to get people to not do these things, but understand it's not say, well, they said they'll build the mine, turn it on, and I'm doing a spreadsheet exercise at this uranium price. They're going to produce. Hey, getting there's another thing. So getting from Kentucky to Oregon to Pan for gold. Well, how many arrows were you taking the back on the way out there in your covered wagon? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I think about it. So can I make it even out there? So we'll see. And then when you get there, it's no picnic either. So it was uh, mining's very difficult. People should really understand that. There's probably easier ways to make money, but anyway, that's why we like it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting project. It's just I feel like it's either going to be a hero or a zero. There's not too many in between. Okay, moving on to agricultural. Jordan wants to know, he says, I heard John say agricultural commodities will likely do well over the next few years or a decade. Is buying a fund like wheat, for example, WEAT, a way to play this rather than trading futures?
Well, you're almost doing the same thing. You got to have your timing down, right? And so I think there's easier ways to play it. I think, playing agriculture is kind of difficult because there's not a lot of publicly traded vehicles. I would encourage this person to go back and look at wheat, what it has done relative to the futures price when there's been run-ups and what's your actual percentage. So if you want to trade it, you might as well just open up a futures account or trade options on wheat. But I don't encourage anybody to do that because your success rate's very low. What I would do is like look at like some of these fertilizer stocks. They're really cheap right now. It looks like they're have been basing for a while. I need to deep dive a little bit more. I don't want to speak to it, but you look at a company like Mosaic Company, it's broken out of a range. It's probably overbought right now. I'm kind of looking at it and looking to for this thing to come in because that's what typically happens. It's overbought right now. I think I saw that potash prices have been going up recently. So that's the reason why. But is that going to continue? I need to look at the supply demand and things like that just to make sure that it's viable. But these things can run too. Again, though, you can't spread yourself too thin. You can't kiss all the girls. You have to weigh what's the possibility there, the opportunity there with some other opportunity. And so I think there's I've invested in things like there was a almond farm, orchard company in Australia, and they packaged it. They did fairly well off and on. I had that company a couple of years ago. I sold it. There's little things like that, but there's not a lot of like I would stay away from some of these land things. Like I think it's Gladstone. These things are overpriced. You know what I mean right now. So um, there's ways to do this, but I would just kind of think when I think about investing in agriculture, I'm just looking at the fertilizer stocks. There's only a handful now because they've consolidated down to like four companies. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, they've had a little spike recently, and um, I think that's what I've been getting some ag stock questions as well. Darren's got another one here. He says current views on phosphate and potash stocks, 3-year time frame. You just mentioned MOS.
Yeah, I think that in the context of a what I think is going to be a lot of money printing, that agricultural prices are going to go up. Um, it's interesting if you drive around any major city in the Midwest where they did a lot of farming, you just keep see this creep into um, urban sprawl going out into cornfields and stuff, productive land. I saw that was doing some jobs out in Illinois, outside of Chicago, and you just keep seeing things creeping out to the west. And once you build a subdivision on top of what used to be a cornfield, that goes away, right? And so the demand for corn, I think, in these things, different things, obviously, the long-term trends in your favor because the per capita acreage per person in the world has been shrinking over time. I mean, Mosaic will even have this on a slide in their slide deck. They show all this stuff, but it's again, you got to catch the cycle right, right? Because these are commodities and they get overproduced. And I remember the last time I looked at it, somebody was bringing on a big potash mine in Canada and was going to swamp. Or you got to deep dive these things and look at where you are in the cycle and if this little pop is sustainable or if it's just going to fade. I don't know the answer over the next 3 to 5 years yet. So
Okay. PGMs and rare earths. Macro thoughts on platinum. You and I have been talking about platinum for probably a year, and we're finally right. It's finally moved and finally bumped up a little bit. What are your thoughts on platinum?
I think platinum's probably going to go to $4,000 or $5,000 an ounce over the next decade, 3 to 5 years. It's overbought right now. It's up about 50%, 40, 50%, I think, in the last couple months. I wouldn't run out and buy it now. It's way
Sure.
yeah, there's that spike. So I wouldn't run out and buy it today. But let it come in. And I think that a lot of people have already done a lot of work. Trader Ferg had a great article. Mikhail Stoyanovich had a good article about this on Substack. Uh, I mean, I would start there. These guys put the work in on why platinum is, especially with the hybrids cars, actually use more platinum than uh, internal combustion engines. So, the other thing you have to look at platinum is it's so much more rare than gold. And historically, platinum is traded at a uh, uh, slightly above gold over time. And
This
that's
is the
not been the case.
ratio. This is platinum divided by gold. So
Yeah.
up
So,
here, yeah, platinum's expensive, gold is cheap, and vice versa. Yeah.
well, that tells you all you need to know right there. So, I think that, that's what I like to look at. Most of the platinum is a byproduct or mined in South Africa or a byproduct, palladium of the Norlis operation in northern Russia. This is where you're relying on for your platinum and palladium supply. So as you're in deficit already, as this is what happens with these things, though, right? People say, well, the deficits have been there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and nothing ever happens. And all of a sudden, boom, it happens like in the last month, the thing takes off. And so then you can start looking at it and saying, okay, what's the case? You know, you've got the problem is you don't have too many publicly traded PGM specific stocks. So I look at it like, when um, it's 16 or 20 times more rare than gold in the Earth's crust, and it's trading at a third of what gold is, I just buy the metal. You can just, I've been buying the metal for over a year, dollar cost averaging. I think that's where I'm going to be. I'll probably take a look at some of these mining companies to see what their all-in costs are and their shafts. These shafts are really deep in South Africa. They're really expensive to operate, and see what's going on. But I think this is a tremendous opportunity, and I'll cross all the platinum group metals. I've been saying that for a while, but you never know, right? We have to see. We just had this recent spike. If you look on the overall chart here, that's just a teeny little spike there on the right. So
It's
is the
almost
trend?
unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the trend in effect? I don't know, but like I said, I think this is a perfect example of a commodity that's been underinvested in, and people had a perception it was going to go away based on EVs and things like that, and then we find out that's not really the case. So it's been in deficit the last couple of years. Nothing's going to change. The price needs to go substantially higher. Most of the shafts are money losing on platinum mining. So I think that's what you want. Something that's being mined and sold below the cost of production is not a long-term business plan. And so uh, you're actually seeing, I think Anglo American is spinning off or has already spun off part of their platinum mines. I forget the name of the company that that could be an interesting thing. The problem is that everybody is on as a shiny object now. So again, the time to be buying it, well, you could buy for under $1,000 an ounce. You could buy platinum. Also, with the rise in gold prices, you're seeing jewelry demand in China starting to increase for platinum as a substitute for
I saw
jewelry.
that.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So I think it's if you look at the historical narrative, which you just showed, it's extremely undervalued relative to gold. That alone, right there, and then it's not going to disappear. It's going to continue to be used. It's not. It's used as an industrial catalyst, also, not just in catalytic converters. But I think platinum, palladium, rhodium. Yeah, I think you will probably do well over the next. I saw that one guy. I enjoy listening to him. I think he's out there a little bit. This guy named Calvin Froage guy or whatever. He's got a little he lives in Panama. He created that Marlin shipping website, and he's kind of like I think he's got like genius level intellect, but he's very schizo sometimes. And I think somebody sent me a tweet of his or where he said he mortgaged his house and went all in on Sabine Stillwater. So
Oh, Sibanye
uh,
Stillwater in South
yeah,
Africa.
so yeah, he's done well. He bought it at the bottom, but I just kind of, enjoy it. I wouldn't do that, but I think there's opportunity over the next 3 to 5 years. I think the thing can probably double at least, and probably possibly go 4 or 5 thousand. And if the entire commodity complex moves and gold goes to 5,000, then why can't platinum be $6,000 an ounce? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know, but I think it's something that I can buy that they can't make more of, and it's extremely cheap historically, probably the cheapest it's ever been relative to gold. So why not?
Yeah. Okay. One that Rick turned me on to is called Bravo Mining. He's a little junior, so I don't know if you've looked into that one or not, but
I have not, but I will look at it now.
put it on your radar. That might be an even more leverage play. Okay. PGM Rare Earths. Antonio wants to know any thoughts on Geomega Resources, a rare earths recycling plant. Have you heard of them?
No, I looked it up. There's another one. Why do I want to deal with this? I mean, these things are all science projects. They're not real. It's not cash flowing. I don't want to. I'll be with them. I hope they optimize and get their thing going because the world needs that. But that's not investing. That's speculating. I'm not interested. Have no opinion. I would stay away from it. If you want to screw around and put $500 in it just so you're forced to follow it, but these are the kind of things that go down 90%, and then 2 years later you look at your brokerage account and go, what did I buy? Why did I buy that thing? That's what happens. They fossilize in people's accounts. I wouldn't screw around with that.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
my just a cursory look. That's just you asked me, so I told you. I looked at it. I wouldn't touch it with your barge pole.
there you go, Antonio. Okay. Any maybe just kind of riff on the DOGE committee for a bit. I came in with pretty high hopes for them. It looks like they might actually be doing something, like with the Social Security. It looks like fewer checks are going out to people that are 130 years old than there were before. What do you see with that?
Well, they're still active, but again, you're swimming upstream. You have an entrenched bureaucracy. You have the media against you, a bureaucracy, politicians. Everybody's against you because they don't want the change because they benefit from it. Okay. What we have found out is that I look at it as like I kind of look at it as like the Democrats are like the Harlem Globetrotters, and they basically run shit up there. And the Republicans are like the Washington Generals, that team that plays them that they is going to lose. Um, who's against at least wringing out waste, fraud, and abuse? Yet there are politicians like Elizabeth Warren and others standing there against this, basically lying, twisting the truth, because they benefit from it. What we have found out, which is interesting, and I knew this all along, I'm sure other people, not some genius, they were basically taking billions and billions of dollars from the federal budget, giving it to these NGOs who were then using it to do things that were against, I'll say it from my own perspective, against my interests. Okay. Um, and that's why they don't like it. We have opened the coffin with the sunlight on the vampires, and they don't like it. They're screaming. But they're fighting back. They've got the propaganda arm of the deep state, if you want to call it that. I call it the entrenched state, mandarins, bureaucracy. They don't want this because they've been stealing. Okay, they've been using it for their purposes to get more wealth and power. We've been financing our own demise here as working people in this country, and of course, the sunlight is on them, so they're fighting back. You're right. There has been some things, but it's not enough to do to affect things. Problem is Elon Musk didn't understand. It's not like in Twitter when he walked in with the sink because he owned the joint and could do whatever he wanted. You can't do that in the government. That's what people don't understand. Well, I don't understand why I think things don't change. It's set up not to change. Okay. That's why we have the election cycle. Things are not allowed to veer. Actually, the founding fathers were a little bit wise. They didn't want things veering too much, okay, and getting radical, swinging back and forth between this radical, okay. So, and then you have this entrenched bureaucracy, which nobody wants or intended, that has its own interests. These people that run these departments or work in them, they don't give, they only care about their own institution. How many times have you watched a congressional watch the DEA, the ATF, the FBI? Well, drug seizures are really not where how come we still have all this drugs coming into the country, Mr. DEA director? Need more money. I need more agents. Tom Homan the other day. I need more agents so we can deport more people. I'm all for it, but they always need more money, need more. That's always a solution. And then there's people that benefit from that, NGOs, other people, contractors. There's millions of people in entrenched interest groups that are feeding at this trough that aren't interested in cutting 2 trillion out of the. So I did see what you said, but DOGE hasn't even been allowed near the Defense Department. Why not? Okay, that's never going to happen. So I think they didn't really understand what they were coming up against. So I think they're trying to do what they can, but uh, but there's people against this because they understand what that means. It takes power away. We slim down the bureaucracy. A lot of people that work in the bureaucracy in DC are part of public sector unions. This is tens of millions of dollars in dues that are siphoned off for political. People don't understand these things, okay? And they're given to politicians. And politicians do what people give them money tell them to do. I hope people are not this naive. People I half the people in the comments and my channel when I say this stuff, they don't agree with me. They actually think this is 1950 Leave It to Beaver Eisenhower administration high school civics class. No, those people are not there for you. They're there for. What kind of person aspires? I've had people tell me when I lived in West Virginia, the guy he was a temp working for me as an admin. He was a pretty smart guy, and all his wanted to do was get a job with the state of West Virginia, some low-level bureaucrat, so he can get a guaranteed check and benefits. If this is what you aspire to, I don't want to be around you. This is somebody with no ambition, no desire to work. And then you see these vignettes and stories about people not showing up for work, got empty office buildings down there. Nobody's at work. And then they're squawking because, you've seen this in companies. Look at all the companies that go through downsizing, but the federal government can't because the media, you know, and it's just pure lying and misinformation. We're going to cut people's Medicaid. No one's talking about cutting Medicare for people that deserve it. Talking about getting illegal aliens off it. And, you know, I knew a guy in West Virginia. He was a workman's comp, and he would go into the woods. You'd come from a workman's comp claim, and he would be in the woods looking with binoculars in a ghillie suit, and you're flinging cinder blocks, building a garage, or shooting across the lake on a jet ski. They bring the guy in, they videotape, and say, "Hey, this is you slinging cinder block. I thought you were 100% disabled in your back." The guy reached over and shut the VCR off and looked up to the, you know, agents and said, "Well, I guess I should get a job." They said, "Well, that's the least of your worries." But yeah, there's a lot of fraud and stuff. And if you can't even get that out of the system, you know, the initial thing was 2 trillion. If Elon had his way, he could fix a lot, but it's not set up for that. It doesn't want to change. It can't. It's an organism that has its own existence as its primary. And it's like a tumor. It's like a cancerous tumor. It just exists to grow and grow and grow, not provide service. Go to the post office. Anybody providing you service or at the DMV? It's a shit show. The kind of people that are drawn to, Anyway, I mean, I was walking asked the lady in Walmart the other day, she had a polo on it said Internal Revenue Service. Who would walk around with this? I would in public enemy number one. But anyways, that getting back to the point, yeah, I don't think it's not going to, they'll be able to do some things at the edges, but it's not going to be enough to affect what the real problem is.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
stand by what I said before. I don't care who you elect, you're going to get more wars and more debt and more spending. It's in the it's been the historical narrative so far. Whether it's Republicans or Democrats, they just have different spending priorities and different constituencies.
Yeah, it was a nice thought, but as far as it taking any real effect, that's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna share my screen here as we wrap up, and you probably already recognize
Oh boy.
the video. And this guy, okay, apparently is running for mayor of New York City. And here's a little 30-second ad that he put together on Twitter for us.
Prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zahran Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
There we go, John. Two rings on his right hand there. What? Maybe riff on this. What are your thoughts on the DMV taking over grocery stores?
I find his brand of third world Marxism and socialism uninspiring and boring. I've heard all this before. Let's walk it through. This idiot's going to start government-run grocery stores by people like Kroger and HEB and Wegmans run on about 1%, between 1 and 2% margins. And these people actually know what they're doing. They have their supply chains lined out. They're run by professional people that know what they're doing. 1 to 2% profit margins. And most of that's coming from the high margin stuff like rotisserie chickens, the pharmacy, shampoo, not selling produce and, rice-a-roni in aisle 4. And so this moron's going to, of course, do this. Um, this is the man that said that violence is a social construct. So people that are going to run it are going to be unqualified DEI or politically connected hacks that have no experience in retailing or supply chain management. Um, People are going to come in and steal because that's why there's no grocery stores in these areas to begin with, because the population there are feral and steal and shoplift. They're not going to arrest anyone or stop the shoplifting. And so this will all end very badly. It won't work. And it was swept under the rug like all the other dumbass policies like this. This guy's tapping into a vein. I talked about this last week. 70% of the people in the United States are living paycheck to paycheck. 24% of those of the people that are living paycheck to paycheck are falling behind. People are desperate. They want somebody to do something. Okay. And so the mainstream political apparatus is not meeting their needs. They're being strip mined every time they turn around, whether it's auto insurance rates, the the medical insurance scam. Look at the stock prices of the health insurance companies. That's what Obamacare was there for. It wasn't there so you could keep your doctor. It wasn't lowering rates, your copays and all this stuff are higher. It's there. It was a sop for the insurance companies. And so again, politicians do what people give them money to do. The problem with Zoran is it sounds good because people that are, never ran a business, never worked at a job, or are under 23 years old don't fucking know anything. Okay. So this sounds like it'll work because why not? Okay. And it's not going to work. And the problem is the only way these things work is if you can create, they built walls around the Iron Curtain. Remember that? It wasn't so people could from the West could go into and be the new Soviet man. It was to keep people inside there. So for these things to work, you have to have a level of violence that you apply to the population to get them to comply. You need mostly a homogenous population that has unified. People in the Soviet Union were unified. They believed in the system in the 40s and 50s, okay, even though many of them were sent to the gulags. The amount of poverty and backwardness in Russia, Stalin industrialized the country. I don't agree with the way he did it, but at some point, once you got past that, that was the easy, low hanging fruit. But then after that, it wasn't going to work. This isn't going to work. He doesn't have the power because he's just a mayor. Are you telling me, first of all, what's probably going to happen is Bill Ackman and all these people are going to get together, these billionaires, and they're going to talk to either Eric Adams or Cuomo, get the other one to resign and stand that other guy up. Okay. This guy won 30% of he won 43% of a primary where the turnout was 30%. Okay. So he may not even get elected mayor. But if he does, he doesn't have the power because we have a federalist system. People are going to leave the city. None of this stuff's going to go through. And then if you want to talk about entrenched interests and double dealing and bribes and graft and entrenched interests, that's the city of New York. It's $100 billion a year budget in that city. This guy has never had a job. The only thing he's done, except for run for office, is run another person's campaign. So this guy's going to run Gotham City. I mean, it's not. Hey, I wish him well, but people are just if he institutes different the smart people that know what's going on, people with wealth, they they have rules put in place. Remember, I talked about this earlier. I'll spend 183 days in Florida and set up a Wyoming or Delaware. They're not going to pay any taxes. This is all the useful idiots buy into this. This guy wants to be in power. His mom is a big time Bollywood producer. She went to worth tens of millions of dollars. She went to Harvard. His dad's a Marxist professor at Columbia. He's been marinated in this. He wants to be in power. So these guys are all charlatans. So I find his 1960s, 70s third world Marxism uh, uninspiring. But like I said, if you've never had a job or ran a business or are under 23 years old, you don't know the difference. But Allah be with them. I hope it works. More than likely, it probably won't. That's what I have to say about these guys. But you're going to see more of this because I've been telling the wealthy in this country, I'm not a socialist. We have to have a system where everybody uh, we've been sold out when we financialize this economy, and the elite have got theirs and pulled up the ladder. We need to build our middle class. We can't have 70% of the people in the country living paycheck to paycheck and getting strip mined every time they turn around, whether it's government fees, property taxes, car insurance, tuition, all this stuff, and expect them not to be open to some kind of charlatan like this coming up with easy answers. That's the problem. But that's a whole nother 2 hour conversation. That's what I think about it. But we'll see what happens. I've said that we're in a civil war, cold civil war in the United States. I said that we're in World War III. It's cold. Um, and you're going to have more political, economic, and social chaos because these problems are, we're in a declining empire. And, I don't see anybody in a real leadership position addressing these things. And this is going to get worse. And I fear that we're going to be doing these swings between radicals on both the left and the right with nobody. And there's no, when Reagan and Tip O'Neill and these guys were there, they actually would sit down. They were cordial. They would get deals done. Okay. For the benefit of the country. Yes, they were creaming off money. Everybody still had their Tammany Hall crap going on, but you don't even have that now. They won't even talk to each other. Okay. And regular people like myself, I talked to a congressman that's down here a long time ago. I knew the guy, and Henry Cuellar, I think he's under indictment now. But anyways, he came out to the wind farm I was running, and he's like, how's it going, John? All this stuff. I knew him from some other stuff. And I was like, Henry, he says, who are you going to vote for? I said, Henry, nobody represents my interests. Well, what do you mean? I go, the border. Okay. All these different things, well, it's all special interests. And, I've known that since I was a kid. If you put money in the sock, they'll pick up the phone and do what you want. Okay. If you don't walking around with a stick and with a cardboard stapled to it or throwing rocks at cop cars it's not going to change anything. So, um, I wish it wasn't like that, but that's how it is. And so I think we have to look at things for the way they are, and that's how we have to. We see in previous declines of societies and empires that this is what we're going to see more of this. The problem is he doesn't have the power to do anything. People just up and leave and have money, and then the whole thing will implode. I think it would be funny. You asked me how it's going to end. Look at how things are in Chicago under that moron, the Marxists or Karen Bass. These people are all incompetent. They don't have any real. They're all marinated in this socialist Marxist, literal Marxist. Karen Bass was a like Maoist Marxist. She's running L.A. Well, you see the results, and this it'll be the same with this guy. How are you going to? I'm sitting in my what would happen to the share price of ExxonMobil if I put Zoran in there as the CEO? It would crash. He doesn't know how to run an oil company. He doesn't know how to run a city, and he's going to get eaten alive by the special interests that do run the city. They're going to be like, wait a minute, and then he's going to have to. He's already getting he's already getting screamed at by some Islamists the other day because he was had to crawfish back from the global intifada that he was, on camera saying in his previous life. Okay, and they were screaming at him, like, "Why are you trying to reconcile with the Jew?" This is the problem being a politician in the modern world where everything's on Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. You can't. Back when the three networks controlled everything, that only shows you now everything's out there. Well, wait a minute. You just said 6 months ago global in you know revolution or whatever. You said that, or whatever. Or violence is a social construct. What are you talking about, man? And the average person, doesn't looks at this and says, "This dude's a wacko, man." But if you got $150,000 in college debt and you got a liberal arts degree and you're working at Starbucks for $8 an hour and you're pissed off because you've made bad decisions or didn't understand how things really work, then this makes sense when he says, "I'm going to get rid of you don't have to pay your debt back, and I'm going to give you free this and free that." Well, of course you're going to vote for him, but you're not. It doesn't work that way. That's how children think. That's Disney. That's a Disney cartoon movie. That's not how real life works. And you have to, that's why I tell people, you better make good decisions. Why can't you discharge this college debt in bankruptcy? Well, I mean, you see, who made that rule that you couldn't do that? Well, your congressman made that. You can walk around with a stick with a cardboard. They don't care because all those bankers are going to make sure they get paid. And they are the ones that drop the money in the sock. And people say, well, that's cynical or that's black pill. No, that's reality, friend. And if you don't get that, you better you're in for a hard life. This is the way things are. People pursue their own self-interests. This guy just wants to be in powers, and he sees the time is right for it, you know. But we'll see. I mean, that's what I think about it. I find this rhetoric. I've heard this all before. I've read it in books. It's right out of like, I mean, there must be like a little school or class you take somewhere that tells you all the slogans to use, sloganeering and the same Marxist tropes. And if he says the only thing, if I hear him say that, the only thing we have to lose is our chains, then I'll probably be, drive up there and put my finger in his eyeball. I mean, it's all tropes and nonsense, and it's not going to work. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, I thought it was fake when I first saw it, and I was laughing. And then I actually did a little research, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is real! I can't believe this is real," but it is. John, love your show. I'm a fan. A lot of our viewers are as well. If people want to get a hold of you and follow your work, how can they do so?
Well, we have the newsletter on Substack. We have a free thing every week, and we have a paid subscription that has a capital appreciation portfolio and a dividend portfolio, Actionable Intelligence Alert on Substack. Then, of course, I have the weekly uh, market report or update that I do on YouTube that some people seem to enjoy. So those are about the two places I'm most active.
Okay, we will put links down in the show notes. John, thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for tuning in. Go to stevebartonmoney.com for more and have a wonderful day.